Sometimes, no matter how much we try to avoid fate or understand our fears, life can take turns more unexpected than anything we could ever imagine.
Let's have a look at the unlucky night that began with celebration but ended in disbelief. The pool party tragedy. In the summer of 1985, a 31-year-old man named Daniel Reeves attended a large poolside celebration organized by the city of New Orleans. The event was meant to honor the lifeguard teams who had successfully completed an entire season without a single drowning incident. It was supposed to be a night of pride and relief, a reward for months of vigilance and hard work. Word of the party spread quickly, and by the evening, more than 200 people had gathered at the venue. The crowd was made up mostly of lifeguards, over 100 of them, many highly trained and experienced. To ensure safety, 4 lifeguards were even assigned to remain on active duty, keeping watch over the pool as the celebration unfolded. Music echoed through the humid night air, people laughed, and the atmosphere felt carefree. Guests moved between the pool and the surrounding deck, enjoying food, drinks, and the refreshing water under the glow of overhead lights. Daniel wasn't a lifeguard. He had come along as a guest, hoping to enjoy the lively environment like everyone else. Throughout the night, people swam, joked, and mingled without concern. With so many trained professionals present, there was an unspoken sense that nothing could go wrong. As the hours passed, the party slowly began to wind down. Guests started gathering their belongings and saying their goodbyes. The noise faded, and the once packed pool area began to empty. It was during this quiet moment, as the crowd thinned, that something unsettling caught someone's attention. At the bottom of the deep end, a motionless figure could be seen beneath the water. Panic quickly spread as people rushed closer, and the realization set in. It was Daniel. He had somehow drowned while the party was still in full swing. Even more shocking was the fact that he had likely been underwater for hours, unnoticed despite the large number of lifeguards present. Daniel was simply a guest at a celebration meant to honor safety and prevention. Tragically, the very event that marked a season without a drowning became the moment that streak was broken. The night that began with celebration ended in disbelief, leaving behind a shock and panic.
Now let's take a look at another unlucky incident of a man who waited his whole life for one race and crossed the finish line already gone. The jockey. On a warm June afternoon in 1923, at a bustling racetrack in New York, a quiet stable worker named Daniel Reeves was about to live out the dream he had chased for years. Daniel wasn't a professional jockey, at least not yet. He had spent most of his life behind the scenes, tending to horses, cleaning stalls, and assisting trainers. Day after day, he watched real jockeys ride with speed and precision, imagining what it would feel like to be in their place. More than anything, he wanted just one chance. Finally, that chance came. His employer, seeing his dedication, agreed to let him ride in an official race. The horse he was assigned was a mare named Midnight Ember, a graceful but underestimated competitor. She wasn't favored to win. In fact, the odds against her were steep. To most spectators, she was just another name in the lineup. But before Daniel could even think about the race, he faced a serious obstacle. He was overweight for the strict requirements of jockeys. To qualify, he needed to shed more than 10 pounds, and he had less than a day to do it. Determined not to lose this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he pushed his body to the limit. He spent hours running under the sun, sweating relentlessly. He barely ate, refusing proper meals, and deprived himself of water in a desperate attempt to drop the weight quickly. By the time race day arrived, he had done it. He met the requirement. But the cost was evident. He was physically drained, weak, and dangerously dehydrated. Even mounting the horse took effort. Still, adrenaline and determination kept him going. This was his moment, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. The race began with a thunder of hooves. From the start, Midnight Ember trailed behind the leading pack. The crowd paid little attention to her or her inexperienced rider. But as the race progressed, something unexpected happened. She began to close the gap. Step by step, she surged forward. As the horses entered the final stretch, Midnight Ember suddenly broke through, accelerating past the others in a stunning burst of speed. The crowd erupted in surprise as she charged toward the finish line. Against all odds, she crossed first. It was a shocking victory, one no one had predicted. Excited and amazed, the horse's owner rushed forward to celebrate, expecting to find Daniel overwhelmed with joy after his incredible win. But something was wrong. Daniel sat unusually still in the saddle, slumped forward, unmoving.
At first, it seemed exhaustion, but when he didn't respond, concern quickly spread. A doctor was called immediately. After a brief examination, the truth became clear and chilling. Daniel Reeves was gone. Somewhere during the race, likely at the height of the physical strain, he had suffered a fatal heart attack. Despite this, his body had remained upright in the saddle as Midnight Ember carried him across the finish line. He had completed the race, but he had not lived to see his victory. It was his first race, and his last. In the days that followed, the story spread quickly, capturing the public's imagination. Midnight Ember, once an overlooked underdog, was given a haunting nickname, the Last Ride. Though she had proven her strength and spirit, she was never entered into another race again. Daniel's story became a tragic legend of ambition, sacrifice, and the thin line between triumph and loss, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come at the highest cost.
Now there comes another incident of a man whose own end seemed written by the same cruel hand of fate he once traumatized. The Tortoise and the Prophecy. In ancient Greece, a renowned playwright named Theron of Argos was widely celebrated for his powerful tragedies, stories filled with fate, suffering, and the inescapable hand of destiny. Ironically, his own life would come to mirror the very themes he wrote about. Late in his life, Theron was given a chilling prophecy. He would die from a falling object. Unlike many who might dismiss such a warning, Theron took it deeply to heart. The idea haunted him. Determined to outwit fate, he began altering his daily life in extreme ways. He avoided buildings, refused to walk near tall structures, and stayed clear of balconies, rooftops, or anything that could collapse or drop something from above. To him, the open sky felt safer than walls and ceilings. By around 455 BC, at the age of 67, Theron had made a habit of spending most of his time outdoors. One quiet day, he wandered through a wide open field in the Sicilian countryside. The sky was clear, the land peaceful, seemingly the safest place imaginable for someone trying to escape a deadly prophecy. But fate has a way of finding unexpected paths. High above him, an eagle soared through the sky, clutching a tortoise tightly in its talons. Eagles have a peculiar method of eating such prey. They carry tortoises high into the air and drop them onto rocks to shatter their hard shells. As the eagle scanned the ground below, it spotted something unusual: Theron's bald head gleaming faintly under the sun. To the eagle, it likely resembled a smooth stone, the perfect surface to break open its meal. In a single fateful moment, the eagle released its grip. The tortoise plummeted from the sky and struck Theron directly on the head. The impact was devastating and instant. The great playwright, who had spent years trying to avoid death from above, was killed in the most bizarre and unexpected way imaginable. To this day, Theron of Argos is remembered not only as a master of tragedy, but as a man whose own end seemed written by the same cruel hand of fate he once dramatized. Let's have a look at another unlucky death that reveals that sometimes, no matter how much we try to avoid fate or understand our fears, life can take turns more unexpected than anything we could ever imagine. The Storm and the Chestnut Tree. Nearly 2,000 years later, another playwright would meet an equally strange and tragic end. His name was Adrian Keller, a talented writer born in Central Europe. By the late 1930s, his work had gained recognition, but so had the political tensions surrounding him. When a powerful regime rose to control his homeland and banned his writings, Adrian was forced to flee. In March of 1938, he left Vienna behind, carrying little more than his manuscripts and uncertainty about the future. He traveled first to Budapest, then eventually settled in Paris, hoping to find safety and a fresh start. But Adrian carried with him an unusual fear: storms. Thunder, lightning, and dark clouds unsettled him in a way he could never quite explain. Just days before his death, he confided in a friend. Surprisingly, he claimed he no longer feared the political forces that had driven him into exile. "There are worse things," he said quietly, "the things that frighten you without knowing why." Those words would soon take on an eerie meaning. On June 1st, 1938, less than 3 months after arriving in Paris, Adrian was walking along a grand boulevard in the city.
The afternoon had been calm, but suddenly the sky darkened. A storm rolled in quickly, bringing gusts of wind and distant thunder. As the rain began to fall, Adrian looked for shelter. Spotting a large chestnut tree nearby, he stepped beneath its wide branches, hoping to wait out the storm. For a brief moment, it seemed like a wise decision. Then a blinding flash split the sky. Lightning struck the tree with explosive force. The impact shattered part of the trunk, and a massive branch broke loose. With no time to react, Adrian was struck directly on the head. The scene was sudden and devastating. He died instantly, right there on the street, ironically just across from a theater, a place that symbolized the life and passion he had been forced to leave behind. Adrian Keller, like Theron before him, became part of a story stranger than fiction, a writer whose life ended in a way that felt almost scripted, shaped by the very unpredictability and irony that defines tragedy itself.
Here comes the unlucky death of a man who built the perfect alarm to wake himself up, but one small change turned it into a deadly mistake. The alarm clock. In the late 1880s, in the quiet streets of Flatbush, New York, a man named Thomas Grady worked a job that most people never even thought about. He was a lamplighter, responsible for extinguishing the street lamps before sunrise each morning, long before the rest of the city stirred awake. It was a job that demanded discipline, precision, and above all, punctuality. But Thomas had one major problem. He was an incredibly heavy sleeper. No matter how early he went to bed or how many alarms he set, nothing seemed to wake him reliably. Traditional alarm clocks, with their soft ringing bells, were practically useless. More than once he overslept and risked losing his job. Frustrated and desperate, Thomas decided to take matters into his own hands. If a normal alarm wouldn't wake him, he would build one that couldn't be ignored. Using simple tools and a bit of ingenuity, he created a mechanical system unlike anything seen before. He ran a wire from his alarm clock to a small wooden shelf mounted above his bed. On that shelf, he carefully placed a heavy 10-pound stone. The idea was simple but effective. When the alarm rang, it would trigger the wire, causing the shelf to tilt. The rock would then fall off and crash loudly onto the floor beside his bed, creating a sudden, thunderous noise that would jolt him awake. And it worked perfectly. Every morning, like clockwork, the crash of the falling stone would echo through the room, instantly waking Thomas. He never overslept again. For months, his unusual invention proved to be a flawless solution to his problem. Then came Christmas Eve, 1885. That night, Thomas decided to host a small gathering at his home. Friends filled the space with laughter, music, and celebration. To make room for his guests, he rearranged the furniture, moving tables, chairs, and even his bed to create more space. The party went late into the night. Exhausted, Thomas eventually said his goodbyes and collapsed into bed, too tired to notice one crucial detail. His bed was no longer in its original position. Now it sat directly beneath the shelf. Morning came quickly. At exactly 5 a.m., the alarm clock triggered as it always did. The mechanism worked just as intended. The wire pulled, the shelf tipped, and the heavy stone dropped. But this time, it didn't crash onto the floor. It fell straight down onto Thomas. The impact was devastating. The same invention that had faithfully woken him for months had now turned against him in a single tragic moment. Though he was found and given medical attention, the injuries were severe. Thomas lingered for several days, never fully recovering. On New Year's Eve, just days after the accident, he passed away. What began as a clever solution to a simple problem became a haunting reminder of how even the most practical inventions can carry hidden risks. In the end, Thomas Grady was undone not by failure, but by the very success of his own creation. Here comes another incident of a single wrong turn on a quiet street changed the course of history forever. The wrong turn. On June 28, 1914, a powerful royal figure named Prince Alexander Volkov, heir to the vast Austro-Hungarian Empire, arrived in the 10th city of Sarajevo for what was meant to be a diplomatic visit. He was not alone. Sitting beside him in an open-top car was his devoted wife, Elena Volkov, who had insisted on accompanying him despite warnings of political unrest in the region. The atmosphere in the city was uneasy. Nationalist tensions were high, and not everyone welcomed the presence of imperial authority. Unbeknownst to the royal couple, danger was already waiting. A group of 6 young conspirators, driven by political motives and a desire to challenge imperial rule, had positioned themselves strategically along the motorcade's route. Each one carried a weapon, each one ready for a moment that could alter history. As the procession moved through the streets, the first attacker made his move. He hurled a bomb toward the royal car. But fate intervened, at least for a moment. The explosive struck the folded roof of the vehicle and bounced off, rolling beneath the car behind them. Seconds later, it detonated with a deafening blast, injuring several officers and bystanders. The driver accelerated immediately, speeding the royal couple away from the chaos. The remaining conspirators, including a 19-year-old named Nicola Dragan, were caught off guard. The opportunity had slipped through their fingers. One by one, they abandoned their positions, convinced the plan had failed. Despite the attack, Prince Alexander chose to continue with his scheduled visit. At City Hall, officials anxiously prepared to welcome him. But when the mayor began delivering a formal speech, Alexander interrupted him sharply. "I come here as your guest," he said, his voice tense, "and I am greeted with violence." The room fell silent. Still, after regaining his composure, he allowed the event to proceed. His next decision, however, would unknowingly seal his fate. Deeply concerned about those injured in the bombing, Alexander insisted on visiting the hospital to check on the wounded. It was a compassionate choice, but one that required a change in route. Unfortunately, the driver was unfamiliar with the city's streets. As the car made its way through Sarajevo, confusion set in. At a critical moment, the driver took a wrong turn onto a narrow side street. Realizing the mistake, he slowed the vehicle and stopped, attempting to reverse and get back on course. It was a small error, but it placed them in exactly the wrong place at the worst possible time. Standing just a few feet away, outside a small shop, was Nicola Dragan, the same young conspirator who had moments earlier believed the mission was over. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The royal car had stopped right in front of him, as if placed there by fate itself. This time, he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, drew a pistol, and fired 2 shots. One struck Prince Alexander, the other hit Elena. Panic erupted as the car sped away once more, rushing toward help. But the wounds were fatal. Within the hour, both of them were gone. What began as a failed assassination had turned into a deadly success because of a single wrong turn. In the weeks that followed, tensions across Europe escalated rapidly. Alliances were activated, ultimatums were issued, and nations began to mobilize. Just 5 weeks later, the world plunged into the devastating conflict known as World War I. Millions of lives would be lost, and it all traced back to a quiet street, a stopped car, and a moment of chance that changed history.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.